Hi everybody, my name is James. I'm giving a little review on FSHN. This is a project that's running an initial exchange offering tomorrow in about 24 hours, I believe. And there is, to put it simply, some pretty significant concerns with this one. So I thought I would get back to a friend who asked about it and also just put it online so that maybe this is helpful for other people. Essentially, we have a cryptocurrency targeting Generation Z called FSHN, and that's pretty cool. But where the real issue at a high level comes in is that there is no information on how they're actually achieving this. And further, we're going to discuss how they've managed to come up with some pricing and why I think that that's a very significant risk. So, based on creativity, game theory, steganography, and cryptography, whatever that means, we've got a way of doing payments between businesses and people. We've got a way of having a decentralized application. And throughout this site, there's a lot of reference to a number of different things that I would expect to see, at the very minimum, a much deeper sort of explanation on how they're doing. And this is the first one. So we've got a way to create a name that's on a coin blockchain. That is something that they're creating. Anchoring or leveraging into Bitcoin, so that would be, I think, where the trust comes from. But how they're achieving this, there's no information on. But where it gets interesting is that they're also talking about having a seamless connection to other DLT-based networks. Now, DLT stands for Distributed Ledger Technology. Generally, it's reserved or predominantly used when people are describing private blockchains. So private blockchains being ones that are much more centralized and under the control of a select few in order to achieve things like faster payments and things like that, and just more control for that small group. Where everything else we're seeing on this website talks about being decentralized and sort of liberating in that sense. And so how they're able to be a blockchain that leverages a public blockchain that also does stuff with DLT. I mean, it's not to say it's not possible, it's just I would expect to see a quite in-depth level of explanation on something like this. And I guess this kind of project in the fashion space is, I would say, likely to skew towards attracting people perhaps with less experience in the crypto or blockchain space, and more in like the fashion and influencer side of things. And so I guess that's also why I think it's important to discuss. We've got an algorithm with no explanation of how that really works in any kind of paper that we'll have a look at. We've got cryptographic consensus by validator entrepreneurs. Now, consensus is basically a way of reaching agreement, and in blockchains like Bitcoin, we see this agreement met by having computers incentivized to validate transactions. And these computers are spread out, they're geographically separate, and they also are independently owned to a large extent. And so we're able to rely on this consensus, this list of rules, this protocol of rules that computers will follow, to place our trust in that. But what validator entrepreneurs means, I have no idea. I think that that's a good example of what we would expect in a white paper. And even without a white paper here, where I would even hope for a technical paper at this level where we're talking about having interoperability between different blockchains. People need to actually understand at a much deeper level how that's working in order to build on it, in order to invest as well. People with more experience here would take 2 seconds on this site and leave. We've got a couple of different ways to buy it. We've got a SAFT, basically a way of investing into an ICO, and we've got LA token, which is an exchange issuing 10% of the total through an IEO, which is basically an initial coin offering that's exclusive to an exchange. Now, this is the part that I found to immediately pop out for me when I had a quick look at the website. They're getting you to do a couple of tasks like join their Telegram and things like that, and you'll be issued 54,000 fashion, which they have decided or approximated themselves at $54. Now, where this gets interesting is like if we look at the actual light paper, it's a light paper that is a white paper here. I don't know what they're trying to do. We have, I'll skip this stuff for now. We have a statement here that they're intending to issue 1 trillion and 1 fashion. Right, and so if they're pricing it here at $54, what we're looking at is a self-evaluation of $1 billion. And to put that in perspective, let's have a look at CoinMarketCap. This website categorizes and lists all of the cryptocurrencies. More than just the top 100, you can keep going across. But basically, we got Bitcoin at 93 billion. And these guys think that on day one, without a product, they sit somewhere in the top 12, right? Top 10 sort of space. Just outright, this indicates to me one of two things. They know what they're doing and they're trying to mislead, or they don't know what they're doing and they're passionate about something else and they're trying to get into blockchain. Either way, massive level of incompetence flag right here. You know, how they think that they magically fit in here when they don't have any product that has any sort of user adoption already. They don't have a community that is actively engaging, and that's probably the next thing I'll talk about. There's no reason for this to come in and compete with other blockchains that have up to a decade of massive amounts of resource and community development and iteration behind them, right? These blockchains, some of them I think are a little bit silly, but it's not easy to get into this group, right? And we don't actually see a token in this group until Maker at 21. So Binance Coin is currently a token, but it's migrating, so there's good reason for why it's gotten to there. But everything else here is literally an entire blockchain that has its own unique value proposition, whether that's creating little contracts that help you execute rules that you come up with without any third-party input, whether that's being a store of value, whether that's some sort of faster payment, or benefits that you get through using an exchange. There's all of these projects have well-established ways like privacy, so that you can anonymously transact with friends and people like that. They all have really powerful propositions to make, and how something that has literally nothing can slot in here is a massive red flag. And I think that it sounds good, like you do a couple of things and make $54. Whether in reality that's what happens is something that is really important to consider. And I'll also get to why this isn't as free as you might think, or at least it can be, but we can also see later incentives that can tempt people to start spending their own money to increase the amount that they have if they think that something is going on, but that if they're unaware of what is really going on. So let's have a look at the Telegram. So by the look of it, we've got 22,754 people have joined. And there's a lot of content here that's like got nothing really to do with Fashion Coin. It's just other projects doing stuff or other articles about things like Gen Z with nothing to do with fashion or blockchain. And I found this one interesting. Never read white paper. It's like they're creating their like little memes, but I don't know. This one's a bit funny. Are they encouraging people not to ask for more? And that's actually a good point. Like, it's important that projects get to a point where the end user doesn't have to understand the tech, but it's also a very convenient way of encouraging people to not look deeper and invest without knowing how the tech's actually done. The last comment I would make on this, or two more, 22,750 people is a significant community to have on Telegram. I see this level of community on projects that have been around for over 12 months that have incredibly engaged people building on this and things like that. The other thing is, like, why on earth would you grow a community of this size and not let them talk to each other? If your whole business and proposition is around making this a community and like an influencer space, why can't people have a chat? And I think it's easy to think that 22,700 people have been incentivized to do it. But if we go and look at some of the other things that people can do to get the bonuses, and we go look at something like LinkedIn, which is obviously going to be harder for people to fake. Oh, that's annoying. Give me a sec. Sorry about that. Alright, let me see my null profile. Cool. So if we go have a look at the LinkedIn, there's only 327 people here connected, right? And so if this little promotion thing is working extremely well, why do we have 22,000 people incentivized enough to join Telegram and then only 327 on LinkedIn, which can also, it's a platform that's harder to fake accounts on, right? And so I find that a little bit telling. I think it's probably not uncommon in the influencer space for people to pump their numbers a bit on Instagram and things like that. It's not my area to really comment on how that's happening, but so all of these things kind of collectively start to stack up. It's fine for projects to have little slip-ups here and there. I think it's pretty natural when you're dealing with the reality that businesses are going to try different things to see what works. And I think that there's a level of respect that you can give that. But when you're seeing consistent things that are lacking in a project, there's no detail on how they're doing their sophisticated tech layer. There's no way of knowing what their intention is to do with this level of raise. $77 million, even if they achieve half of that or even 10% of that, really, it's pretty juicy for them to be able to walk away with. They can literally, like, if you think about $77 million, you can hire a good developer for a full year on probably $100,000 without any, and they'll be able to build half of this. So you're looking at like a team of 5 and tell them to build whatever's described here, and they'll be able to hack some sort of app together that does some sort of profile picture and stuff. But it's extremely loose. This is basically a promise without anything behind it. And if you have enough money, there's a good chance you can make it happen. But we're also not seeing any team. There's no information on who's running this aside from the fashion entrepreneur behind it. I'm not going to spend too long on who that is, just because I feel like I have a gut feeling that they're just out of their depth on it, in all honesty. But we don't see anyone with a tech background helping here. We don't see any advisors that have a history of building good offerings. But if you give anyone enough money, they're probably going to be able to pay some people to solve some issues. But I think what we've seen in the space is that we have coins raise capital. They spend a small amount of money basically paying to keep things kicking along so that they're not in trouble with groups like the SEC, so that they're proving that they are trying to deliver on. And then they pay themselves a pretty healthy salary, right, out of that pool, right? You've got $77 million, you hire 10 developers at $1 million a year. Great, you can keep running that for 70 years, right? And you can pay yourself $300K a year, easy, or much more than that. You just justify it however you want. Everyone's giving you their money without you having to promise them how you're going to spend it. And maybe you don't spend as much over here as you do on the founders. It's something to be really conscious of. And I think the last thing that is really worthwhile talking about is this idea of market making. My, I guess, overall perspective is that this is the strategy here. It's to shift 10% of the IEO into a couple of $1 million up to 77 million for these guys, and then probably not a whole lot more to actually deliver anything meaningful, or at least it won't achieve any growth for people that invest. And so there's like 2 different ways of looking at it. It's a scam, and these guys are going to take this money and do the bare minimum, or it's a scam. These guys will do everything that they can do to build it, but it's still not going to be able to break above, right? When you're already trading, your initial starting price puts you in the top 12, right? For you to have a double, just a 2x improvement, right? All of a sudden you're sitting in the top 8, and then another, where's the upside for this? A lot of crypto projects, if people are investing in at this level where there's only a white paper and nothing else, you'd be hoping that the upside potential is much higher than this, right? At best, if they 5x, they're literally competing with the world's largest and most adopted blockchains. It's just not going to happen. And so I think that that's really important to consider. Even if you're able to get your allocation at a 50% discount at this level, it's still not worth half of this. It's just not, and it just will never get there. But in saying that, we do have a aspect here that people often don't understand or aren't privy to, and it's called market making. Now, I'm not saying that these guys are doing it. There's no evidence that suggests that they are, but it's quite common with exchanges that do an IEO to ensure that there's some level of market making occurring, where basically they or another third party would receive a large amount of fashion. So let's say 5% of the total, which would be 50 billion, I believe. And so they have a huge amount, and what they do is they then spend their own money, and they ensure that they are basically buying it from themselves, buying the fashion with their own money and creating a market price. Now, in a good sort of market making ecosystem, they just kind of keep things moving along so that if people are looking to sell, they have liquidity, and that means basically people on the other side willing to buy. And if people are looking to buy, then they can also sit there and use their fashion to sell it down and give it to those people. And that just helps projects keep things moving so that the community can actually adopt it, right? Because if you're someone that's looking to get involved and you can't buy it because there's nothing there, or you can't sell it because there's not enough people that want to buy it, and that basically means you have to take a massive loss as you sell down into the limited amount that there is, it creates like a lot of friction, so people just, you can't even get involved. So a good market maker does that part. A bad one will actually carry the price up, and so they will effectively paint the chart. So they'll trade with themselves and buy and sell and move the chart in a way that looks like it's doing it's proving that the product is successful, right? And then after they can slowly do this little painting of the chart, they'll leave it in a position where people that aren't so familiar will think this looks like it's about to break out. And then what happens is they'll let people carry that. And so real investors, maybe you're someone that got this free 54,000, and now you've seen the price carry so that this is no longer 540, it's worth 800, $100, let's say, and you think, wow, I don't just want this much, I'm going to put $1,000 into this because I think that what I've seen so far, this is working. And now we might have an app at this point, right? We might have paid a couple of developers with our enormous amount of capital to build something that looks like it's working. And basically it's just this massive game of convincing people to give their capital over to something that honestly, at all levels that I can see, doesn't deserve it by any right. It's not going to compete in this top 10, like ever. And I don't like making bold sort of claims on crypto projects, but this thing is just categorically not going to be there. I'd love to regret that one day, but from what I can tell right now, there's nothing that puts me to have any sort of speculative belief in this. It depends how crazy Gen Z gets with their self-fulfilling prophecies, I guess. But I think that basically sums up everything that I'd like to talk about. I hope that you've found this useful. If you're someone that works directly here and you're looking at this thinking, oh my God, this is not at all what we're aiming to do, reach out. Happy to have a chat. Happy to look at what you could be doing different. I'm not here to come and just poo-poo on all these projects, but I think that while it's admirable that if we've got, new like women in blockchain sort of emerging and things like the fashion space, at the end of the day, I'm looking at this as a financial product, and I'm thinking that it's most likely women in the fashion space that are going to lose out. And so in a roundabout kind of way, it's actually detrimental to trying to grow that and be supportive of that community. But happy to talk to anyone that's interested. Happy to talk to this exchange here about why they would choose to support something like this. I mean, that's a pretty big red flag for this as a business for me. Hope this was useful. All the best. Have fun. Trade safe. Bye.